Welcome to our March webinar, a collaborative presentation of the Federation for Children with Special Needs and the Recruitment, Training, and Support Center. My name is Janie Kreco, and I am the Training and Support Specialist at the RTSC. Today's webinar is IEP to IPE, Transition Planning for Students with Disabilities, presented by Nancy Mader, CRC, Director of Transition Projects at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. Nancy received her undergraduate degree at the University of Wyoming and her graduate degree in Rehab Counseling at the University of Northern Colorado. Prior to coming to the Federation, she worked for 7 years at Easter Seals in Boston as Manager of Employment and Training. During the webinar, please type your questions in the toolbox and we will try and answer them during the presentation. Past webinars are archived on the RTSC website, along with many resources on trauma and learning and educational issues that impact students in child welfare. Nancy, I just want to say that you are a wonderful asset, new asset to the Federation, and we're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you. I want everyone to know this is my first webinar, so I'm going to give it my best here, and we are going to talk about, like Janie said, the transition from an IEP to an IPE. This is for transition planning for students with disabilities. Understanding the differences between an IEP, an individualized education plan, and an IPE, which is an individualized plan for employment. We are going to start with a general comparison. So IEPs, they are for students with disabilities where the disability impedes the student's ability to access the curriculum. An IPE is a substantial barrier to employment caused by disability. The IEP is developed by a team at the school. It's going to consist of family members, student, teachers, administration, specialists, and the IPE is very much smaller team. So it's going to be the rehab counselor and the student and possibly a family member or guardian, but not necessarily. Depends on the intellectual level and the functioning level of the student. IEPs are entitled services. All of the services on an IEP the student is entitled to. IPEs are not entitled services. They are eligibility services. The IEP is a legal document, and the IPE is a contract between the student and vocational rehabilitation. IEPs are defined by IDEA, and IPEs are defined by the Rehab Act and WIOA. We'll talk about all of this stuff as we go. The IEP the goal is graduation. And that could be an umbrella of services to get that student to graduation. The goal of the IPE is competitive, integrated employment. The IEP is a broad range of services. The IPE is a very limited range of services. They are both reviewed and updated annually. The purpose of IDEA is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. Why is transition important? To prepare the student on an IEP for life beyond high school. We're trying to increase the student's ability to achieve successful outcomes in adult life. This is trying to start this as early as possible so that our students are successful beyond high school. For these very reasons, unemployment rates for working age adults with disabilities hover at around 70%. And students with special needs are 3 times more likely to live in poverty as adults. So starting young to talk about transition and life after high school is incredibly important. Transition services are a coordinated set of activities for a student. They're a results-oriented process. They're focused on academic and functional achievement. This is going to vary for all students. If a student is 19 and still has a math goal on their IEP and they've not learned math, that's not likely a goal they're going to reach, and so maybe more functional achievement goals that are measurable, that are going to help them with life after high school. The IEP facilitates movement, and transitional goals facilitate movement from school to post-school activities. They consider strengths, preferences, and interests. Transitional goals should focus on the student's vision. And services may include post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, continuing and adult education, adult services, independent living, and community participation. They can include some of those, all of them. I mean, it's going to vary per student. Beginning no later than the first IEP to be in effect when a child is 14 years old in the state of Massachusetts, 16 in federal law, or younger if determined appropriate and updated annually thereafter. So an IEP must include appropriate measurable post-secondary goals based on age-appropriate transition assessments related to training, education, employment, and where appropriate, independent living skills. The transition services, including courses of study, need to assist the child in reaching their goals. This is all driven by the vision of the student, what they want to do after high school. Who is eligible for transition services? Every student on an IEP receiving special education services. Students between the ages of 14 under math law and 16 under federal law, so in between the ages of 14 and 22. Any disability classification. In a nutshell, transition. The process for planning and preparing a student on an IEP to move from high school to adult life. The services the school must provide to prepare transition age students for employment, post-secondary education, and independent living. It ends with the receipt of a high school diploma or when the student turns 22, when schools are no longer obligated to provide the student services. We're going to transition from talking about an IEP to talking about an IPE. So we have in Massachusetts something called the Chapter 688 law, the Turning 22 law. The Chapter 688, the 688 referral form, should be filled out by the school 2 years before the student leaves or graduates from school. So if a student is going to graduate and they're on an IEP at 18, the form should be filled out when they're 16. If the student's staying on in school services until 22, the form should be filled out at 20. This is the referral from the school for adult services. This is just a referral. The 688 is not a continuation of special education. It is not an adult eligibility determination, and it is not entitlement to adult services. Why we talked about a 688 is if a student's vision is employment, the referral would go to the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission for vocational rehabilitation. When referred to the Mass Rehab Commission, students must be determined eligible to receive services. We're going to talk about WIOA. WIOA focuses MRC and VR services on students between the ages of 16 and 22. So we talked about transition planning from an education point of view, and we're going to talk about education planning from an employment perspective. It begins while a student is receiving high school services between the ages of 16 and 22, and preferably 2 years before completing school. So Mass Rehab and VR services are a limited service. They don't want a 14-year-old referred to services who's going to be in school until they're 22. So they're really looking for their referrals to come 2 years before completing school services. Transition planning from an employment perspective is intended to help prepare the student to be able to live and work as independently as possible once school services are completed. Students who have work experience during high school are twice as likely to have a job and will earn more money after high school. This is the real drive. Getting students with disabilities, students in high school, employment experience while they're in high school.
Can I interrupt for just a minute,
Sure.
Nancy? Okay. A couple of questions have come in around the timing piece, and
Sure.
I myself have a question. I don't want to put you on the spot, but what does WIOA stand for?
Okay. Fair question. We do talk about it later on, but WIOA stands for the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act.
Okay. And what is it? It's how do you say it as a?
WIOA.
WIOA. Okay. All right. So that's what we want to hear more about
Yes.
in IEP meetings is the WIOA.
WIOA. Yep.
And just a couple of timing questions.
Sure.
So the whole idea of the IPEs, and I think you mentioned that they should be being looked at pretty much as soon as the transition planning starts through the IEP.
So it depends on when. So transition in Massachusetts is going to start at 14.
Yep.
So you would want to start talking about adult services then. But if you're starting to talk about adult services at 14, you're not going to refer them for adult services until 2 years before graduation or leaving school. Okay. So if they are on track to graduate when they're 18 or 19, you're going to try to have them in an IPE at 16 or 17, so that Mass Rehab has 2 years to work with them and provide them with services.
Okay. I think we've uncovered some questions here.
Sure.
Okay, so I thought this was a great question. What if the student is focusing on a 2-year college?
Okay.
Can the when does the 688 happen, or doesn't it? You can be on adult services and go to college, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I thought.
Yep.
So that can still happen 2 years prior to.
Yes. And Mass Rehab can help them with college.
Okay.
So you still want to refer them 2 years before they're ending high school for Mass Rehab services.
Okay. And then a couple of people are asking about whether these employment goals apply to specialized schools, Chapter 766 schools, and of course they do, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So any school that's getting money, federal or state money, this would apply. All these rules will apply.
So if they're out of district, if the student is going out of district, likely they will have their Mass Rehab counselor in their home district.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So that's a service that's an LEA responsibility.
I would, yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yep. And I think that would probably work better for them because they're going to come home most likely, or, that's where their services would come from.
Okay. So,
but that depends on what their need is, and Mass Rehab is located, it's a statewide agency, and they have 24 offices across the state. So that's something that could also, it's not set in stone.
Okay. And I think to sum it all up, one of our people in the audience says, so a student at age 20 can have both an IEP and IPE and can also apply to DDS.
Yes, they can.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Great summarization there. Okay. Excellent. All right.
All right. So here's our slide, our WIOA, our Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act. So this was signed into law by the Obama administration in 2014 and enacted in July of 2015. And what it does is it consolidates the funding sources, or streamlines the money from the WIA, the Workforce Investment Act, which was enacted in 1998. How this impacts Mass Rehab and VR in Massachusetts. It now mandates that Mass Rehab offices work across the state with youth ages 16 to 22. Before WIOA, some rehab offices worked with students in transition and others didn't, and it didn't make any sense who did or didn't. And now 15% of the annual MRC VR budget goes to youth services. How that is boiled down is what is called pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS. They were calling it PETS, but now it's pre-ETS. So if you see PETS, it's pre-ETS. They're designed to give students an introduction to work that will serve them to inform future vocational choices. It's going to give them work experience, either through a paid work experience, through an internship, some sort of work experience. It's going to develop their work habits. So they're going to start talking about hygiene, dressing for work, timeliness, all of those things that impact work. And it's going to help them obtain experience that will make them more marketable in a competitive workforce. Like one of the last slides said, they're more likely to get a job if they have work experience in high school. So this is what this serves. VR assists individuals with disabilities to prepare for, obtain, and maintain employment. It's a state agency. It is eligibility based. The focus is on competitive integrated employment, and it provides necessary services to successfully achieve a specific employment outcome.
This is kind of new to me also, and
Sure.
I'm learning as we're going along here, but my question, of course, I get priority because I'm sitting here. What are the eligibility criteria?
I have that coming up here.
Excellent, okay.
Actually, it might be next.
Excellent.
No, it's not.
It
is coming up.
I can wait, thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
Nope, I'm
Okay.
fine. Keep going.
So students referred for Mass Rehab VR services will meet with a counselor. Some of them go into schools. I know in the Boston area, the VR counselors are assigned specific high schools that they spend time in each week. And it's going to vary for, high schools out where it's more rural, but that's how it's operating around the Boston metro area. So if a student is referred, they'll meet with the counselor. If the student is determined eligible for Mass Rehab services, the counselor will help the student develop an IPE, which is an individual plan for employment. And the VR counselor will work with the student through high school and until they are successfully employed for 90 days. So that could be through high school, through college, through searching for jobs, and then working for 90 days. What it is not is helping them find a summer job. Okay, that's not what Mass Rehab is designed to do. These pre-ETS programs are designed to give them work experience, such as a summer job, but that's not going to be a successful case closure. The pre-ETS programs are going to give them a job. The pre-ETS programs are very specific to what they're helping kids and youth do, but Mass Rehab is not a summer job program. It is a job that the student is going to stay in, not indefinitely, because no one does that, but for like a permanent job. A consumer is eligible for Mass Rehab services if they have a physical or mental impairment which constitutes or results in a substantial impediment to employment and can benefit in terms of an employment outcome from vocational rehabilitation services and requires vocational rehabilitation services to prepare for, secure, retain, and regain employment. Those are their words, not mine. So, for years, Mass Rehab was operating on a system where there were 3 levels of disability. That they were operating where they allowed the individuals with the most extreme levels of disability. And they opened it up a few years ago to let all levels of disability receive services from Mass Rehab. So I'm trying to think of cases that I saw. Individuals injured on the job where they couldn't return to that specific job. Like if they were working in construction and had a leg injury, those individuals may not have been able to just a leg injury, everything else was fine with them, may not have had the opportunity to receive Mass Rehab services, but now they are able to. They've opened it up to a broader field. Any questions?
There's a lot, but
Okay.
I think we'll continue
Okay.
because it may be answered along the way. Yeah.
So really quick, we're going to talk about adult services versus special education services. So I think this is very hard for people who are used to school services and used to IEPs to transition into this IPE mindset. Adult services are not an entitlement. So each agency has an established eligibility criteria that all participants must meet. And adult services are dependent on availability of funding. They are going to talk to you about money in an IPE meeting. Mass Rehab sets rates for certain services and sets amounts of money they can spend on certain things. I think right now they're going through the process of amending what they'll spend on college for clients. think it's going to go down some. It was very high for a while. So they are going to talk to you about money. They're going to talk to you about services, and what's available and what they can and cannot pay for. And mass rehab services are focused and time limited. They don't want someone on their caseload for 10 years. They have people on their caseloads for 10 years, but the sole goal of mass rehab is to take clients in and get them jobs as quickly as possible, have them work 90 days and then close them, and provide only the needed services to get them to that point. They're not going to have services just added on that may or may not do anything. They're going to be specific. Financial need is required for some mass rehab VR services. Under the pre-ETS programs, financial need is not considered. Okay, so for the students who are still in high school, financial need isn't considered. It's after. So if a student went through pre-ETS and college under mass rehab and then graduated, they turned 22, financial need is going to start to be considered there. Okay?
Yeah. Nancy, this is a verification question.
Sure.
And Betsy, you and I have the same brain because I had this question also. So it's pretty much been understood, or I don't know if it's actually stated or the law, that when you do a referral to an adult agency, you refer to one agency.
So are you talking about 688?
Yeah, well, for any kind of services, even afterwards. I know that that's going to be a controversial thing, but
right.
I also know that MRC will work with other agencies,
yes.
won't they? Okay, so you go ahead and explain.
So if you're referring for an agency, I would think beyond employment when I'm referring for that agency. So if it's someone with a significant developmental disability who's going to need housing, mass rehab does not consider housing, transportation, none of that is on their radar or the services that they provide. So if you have a student who is going to need longer term services, refer them to DDS or DMH. Okay, so mass rehab is time limited. So you can self-refer yourself to mass rehab. You can walk into a mass rehab office and get on the wait list. You can have your parent take you. So it's still eligibility based, but you don't have to have a referral to get the services. Does that clarify?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the VR process is slow. If you need a job tomorrow, mass rehab is not your agency, okay? So for students who are in high school, it's going to be through the high school, most likely, okay? If it's not through the high school, they're going to go to a mass rehab office and go to an orientation. After that, they are on a 30-day wait list. Then they will get a letter with their counselor, and they'll go to an intake meeting and an application meeting. So they'll fill out the application with the counselor, and then there is 60 days for the mass rehab counselor to determine their eligibility. And then there's 90 days. So if you are determined eligible, you just go into plan development and have 90 days to determine or to develop your IPE. Okay. So then they provide services. In the best case scenario, you're employed for 90 days and they close your case. And they do offer post-employment services based on need. This is pretty minimal through mass rehab, and it is time sensitive.
Is that true for, excuse me, I interrupted again.
Okay.
Is that true for I keep thinking you're saying pre-op, but I think you're saying pre-EDS. Pre-EDS. Is that true for the pre-EDS also?
So pre-ETS is what part?
So they have to wait that long period of time to get those services?
To get the pre-ETS services, they have to be determined eligible for mass rehab. Okay. And then they have to have a plan. So the pre-ETS services will be in their plan. So you're looking at if you have no idea what your employment goal is and have no documentation to support anything, you're looking at 6 months before you're in a plan, possibly. Okay.
All right.
Age 16 or 2 years before completing school services. So they don't want you at 14. They don't, if you're 16 and looking to go to school and be in school services till 22, 19 or 20 is when you're going to connect with Mass Rehab. And who can refer? Can go through the school, can be someone from the IEP team. You can walk into a Mass Rehab office and go to an orientation. And then your family or other service providers can refer you. Eligibility determination. So MRC has 60 days to determine eligibility. Eligibility is based on existing records. So an IEP might have the necessary documentation to determine that that student is eligible for Mass Rehab. Okay, the 504 plan might be enough information. Psych reports, achievement testing, medical records. I think most likely for students, this is going to be an easier process than for adults. Adults, may not have current medical records or have copies of them, or might not be detailed enough to get them services, but students most likely are going to have that information through the school. An IPE is a written plan. It's a contract between the student or the client and the MRC VR counselor, okay, through that agency. It's developed to identify services to be provided by MRC and other agencies. So this is where DDS could come into play. This is where DMH could come into play. Or if they're receiving services from an autism foundation, or so they do work with other agencies, both nonprofit and state agencies. So services should enable the individual to achieve the agreed upon employment objective. The purpose of the IPE is to achieve the specific employment objective of an eligible individual who can choose to develop all or part of the IPE independently or with the assistance of the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission or other entity. So this is where, with Mass Rehab, parents and family members and guardians may come into play to help this student determine their employment outcome. This is new for Mass Rehab. Okay, Mass Rehab is used to person-centered planning. One individual, one client who they help come up with an employment goal. They aren't used to working with families and guardians, but this now with WIOA, they're having to learn to do this, and they're having to involve families in decision making, because they might be working with a 16-year-old student who is graduating at 18 and they need help making these choices, or they want it. So the purpose of the IPE, we're working towards this employment outcome. All Mass Rehab is going to talk to you about is employment outcome, okay? How do we get them to be employed? So hopefully, in a dream world, the student comes in with very strong interests and realistic employment goals. They might even have work experience that they can work off of and say, I liked this at my job, I didn't like this. These are things I do want to do. These are things that I don't want to do. That's helpful, extremely helpful information for a rehab counselor. So the goal should include their strengths, their transferable skills, concerns, abilities, interests. It should take all of those things into account, on top of how much schooling does that consist of? Can they get into that school? If college is a goal within their employment goal. So the specific VR service is to be provided in the most integrated setting appropriate to achieve the employment goal. So this is competitive employment. This is integrated in the most integrated setting that they can be in, okay? And it should include appropriate assistive technology and personal assistance services. So assistive technology can be something that is determined before the student gets a job, or they might get a job and realize that they need assistive technology to help them perform it better. Personal assistance services could be someone who is quadriplegic who needs someone to come into the office every single day and help them use the restroom or eat or whatever that is. MRC VR services available, so vocational and diagnostic assessment, skills training or education required for employment, job placement assistance, a referral to a community rehabilitation program, job-driven training, assistive technology, evaluation and services, and benefits counseling. the counselor's role in the transition process. So this is what's new, okay? So they need to build a relationship with the student. They're going to consult and collaborate with the family and school staff, which is also new to them. They're going to attend IEP meetings as available. You have to always remember that rehab counselors have maybe 150 to 200 cases on their caseload. Right. So they'll go to IEP meetings as available. What has also changed for the rehab counselors is now they're spending 8 hours a week on transition services, or either in a high school or meeting with the youth, but their other goals have not changed. So they still have the same amount of caseload that they had before and have to produce the same amount of successful job placements. So working and being active in the rehab process as students, families, and guardians is going to help you see better success, better outcomes. They're going to engage students in individual career counseling. They're going to provide them with resources, websites, transition fairs, career fairs, interviewing opportunities. They're going to provide school staff with information and resources. And they're going to provide employment-focused workshops to students, information about work-based learning experiences, the pre-ETS internships and programs, and they're going to facilitate referral to benefits specialists. This is an important one for students who may already receive benefits. How will working impact their benefits? Which is scary for both students and families who may depend on this money. Like, how is it going to impact them, and what are the cost benefits of working? As we stated before, Mass Rehab has 90 days to develop the IPE. The services may include counseling, vocational assessment. If a student is very stuck, does not know what they want to do, vocational assessment can be done within Mass Rehab, or they may contract it out to get that information. The pre-ETS programs, assistive technology evaluation, they may be referred to an independent living center, benefits counseling, identifying training, transportation options. This is something that's new within the pre-ETS programs, is transportation training. They realize that this is probably the biggest obstacle to youth going to work. And the pre-ETS programs are trying to address it. And there's also a new program through Mass Rehab called the Pathways to Transition program that's going to try to, it's part of that program is addressing transportation. Vocational education and training, job placement, and coaching. Job coaching through Mass Rehab, again, is very limited. Any questions?
Lot, okay. But I think this has prompted more questions than I've ever seen.
Okay.
So, but we'll do what we can.
Okay.
All right. Keep going.
The IPE development is going to depend on the student's needs, and that can be determined. It's going to determine the employment outcome, right? So you're going to identify the objective, nature, and scope of the VR services. Again, this is going to be limited, and I know I keep stressing this, but you're not going to have 30 services on an IPE. You might have 5 or 3 or 2. It's going to depend on financial availability. It's also going to evaluate the unique strengths, resources, and priorities, abilities, and interests of the student. Who is eligible for WIOA in the pre-ETS programs? A current consumer of MRC, a student enrolled in high school with a disability who is also a consumer of Mass Rehab, okay? Within the ages of 16 to 22, the pre-ETS programs are only serving students between the ages of 16 and 22. The ideal time to start this process is within 2 years of leaving school. Pre-employment transition services. Under WIOA, there are 5 services: job exploration, work readiness training, work-based learning experiences and internships, counseling regarding post-secondary options, and self-advocacy, mentoring information. So this can be done with Mass Rehab Counselor or with one of the pre-ETS programs.
These are all while the student is still under an IEP. right?
Yes.
So aren't some of those services also couldn't they also be part of the transition planning for the IEP? Through the school.
What do you mean?
Okay,
Rephrase that
so
for me.
for example, job exploration. So an IEP goal can be that the student, researches different kinds of jobs and maybe is able to go out and, do some hands-on or, actually go to different jobs as an IEP goal, not as an IPE goal.
Right.
Okay. Work-based learning experiences and internships, they could be through an IEP, I believe.
Right, but these are going to be separate, most likely.
These are separate, okay.
So this is going to be something that is set up for them, that is specifically getting them employment experience. So if there's a student who can do that on their own, they probably don't need mass rehab, okay?
Right,
But they might be on an IEP.
Right. A really good transition plan through an IEP.
So they might not need this. They might not want mass rehab.
But so I think what the questions are sort of tending to is, can we have both?
You can have both.
You can have both. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So mass rehab is separate from the school.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So if they need an assessment, they're going to get the assessment. So if a student has no idea what they want to do, they don't know what their interests are, they're going to get an assessment for that. Either doing interest inventories online while the rehab counselor is sitting next to them, or a contract to an agency who can do that for them. Okay.
Do they work with the school and the IEP? I know you said that if they were available,
they would go to the meeting and have input, but
they're not going to collaborate, so to speak?
No.
All right. Okay.
The services are going to be separate.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
But part of the students transition at the same time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So now they're kind of going down parallel paths.
Yes.
And someone else is now saying, well, how about the collaboration with adult services?
How to, like DDS?
DDS, for example, DCF, will they interface, it's a great word, with those departments or services?
Ideally, they should. I mean,
but not necessarily with 150 clients. Yeah.
But let's say there's a student who their goal is to work independently, but they're not there right now. So is that something that DDS is changing things because they realize that there's a certain demographic who are being missed right now, who want to work, but they don't have the skills to work completely independently, and mass rehab can't support them. So that is where DDS
would come in. Okay.
Yes.
So there is going to be collaboration, but it might have to be, the collaboration might have to come from the student themselves or
with families to support that as well.
Okay.
So mass rehab doesn't do anything with housing. So they might have a client who cannot necessarily live independently, but is able to go to work and work independently.
Gotcha.
Okay. So that's where DDS picks up, and that's where family or guardian involvement has to,
so there's no case management here, is I think what we're coming down to.
It's employment case management. So they will, all things getting them ready for work, they manage those.
Yep. So it's still up to the families to be those case managers.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Okay. And what my concern, of course, is for the kids in the child welfare system.
Right.
But don't have families. Yeah.
But this is where someone who is a guardian who can get them, who has knowledge of mass rehab, if you're working with a student who is on the path to work, mass rehab is their way to get there. Okay?
Yep.
And they might help them with college or a specific training, and then help them get a job. It is hard for us who do not have disabilities to get jobs. Learning how to interview, learning how to interact with employers. Mass rehab will help them with those skills. Okay.
Yep.
Examples of the pre-ed services: resume development, job application. Applying for jobs online is a horrible thing. I did it for years at the Easter Seals. I was a rehab counselor, and I spent an hour and a half one day applying to one position at the Home Depot for someone. And I was like, this is an entry-level job at the Home Depot. It took me an hour and a half. So that's what the pre-EDS programs are designed to do, support students, teach them how to do this now so they can do it on their own in the future. It's going to offer them work experience, okay? I cannot stress to you enough how important work experience is in high school. It gives them understanding of what they do like, what they don't like, and what possible vocations or interests or schooling they might have in the future. Now they're doing transportation training, which is really, really amazing service. Self-advocacy. How do you talk about your disability? Do you understand how your disability affects your work, affects how you communicate with people? Soft skills training, interacting with your coworkers, you know, how to settle a dispute, how to, you know, talk to your boss versus, you know, your parents or your friends. You know, there are many things with soft skills training that our youth need, and self-care. So hygiene, how do you dress for an interview? How do you dress for work? You have to take a shower, comb your hair, all of those things that seem obvious maybe to us, but I've worked in this field for a very long time. They're not obvious to everyone. In summary, the IEP is entitled services. If there are services in the IEP, that's a legal document. So the IPE is going to be more developed based on needs and what is available, and it is eligibility based. The IEP is going to have more of a broad range of services to prepare a student for life after high school. There could be OT, PT, speech. Those things are not going to be on an IPE. It's going to be very driven towards employment. So that could be job skills training, it could be education, it could be some transportation training, but it's going to be limited, and it's all going to be driven towards work. So collaboration between student, family or guardian, school, service providers, and state agencies is key. Everyone is working for a positive outcome for our students with disabilities. Again, so transition services can play a significant role in improving the probability of graduation and successful transition to post-secondary education and/or employment. It's a collaboration engagement between students, families, guardians, and school, and cooperation between agencies, interagency agreements, service providers, community partners are imperative. Here are the list of adult agencies that a 688 could go to, and as I stated before, the 688 should go to the agency that is going to provide the long-term. So if someone has a developmental disability, DDS, you can still refer that person to Mass Rehab. If employment is their goal, they should still be referred to Mass Rehab. My contact information, I direct 2 projects. So I'm doing a Mass Rehab project and the Link Center, which is the Collins Center here at the Federation.
Okay.
And it looks like we have many questions.
We do have many questions.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to run through them and hopefully answer everybody's questions.
Okay.
I did have I had a question that's gone in and out of my head, so hopefully it comes back. All right,
Okay.
So let's start up here. Oh, I know what it was. You always stress availability of funding.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, is there any talk within the new administration for taking away any of these funds?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, good. That's a good thing. Okay.
I wait. I hold my breath.
Yes.
That
yeah.
they don't.
Okay. All right. That's been a couple of
Sure.
Patty's
And
concern.
it's a concern across the board.
Yeah.
What has happened though with the WIOA money is the Obama administration wrote them into the established law.
Okay.
So to take that money away, they would have to take
Rewrite
apart
the law.
the
Yeah.
entire law, which I don't see them doing, because that money also supports one-stop career centers. WIOA is youth initiatives, youth without disabilities initiatives, so providing those individuals with work experience. I mean, it's a really large law to take apart and to steal this little bit of money that Obama put in there.
Okay. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on
Yes.
that. Another attendee is asking about the TIP program.
Okay.
And her question is, if a 16-year-old will remain in school until 22, is that an option?
I think that you should always explore every option.
Mhm.
So TIP programs are through the independent living centers.
Okay.
I would pursue any employment services that you
Okay.
can possibly find.
All right. And one will not make you not eligible for another one? Okay.
No, you don't have a scorecard.
Okay.
Or like many of the clients at Mass Rehab are come back,
Yeah.
every few years after
Mhm.
they've lost their job or want to change
Mhm.
jobs. So I call them repeat offenders.
Repeat offenders, yes. High frequent flyers.
Yes.
Yeah. So the MRC VR counselors, they are not within the schools, right? They are there VR counselors in schools now?
They are going into the schools. They're not set there, but they spend a certain amount of time,
Okay.
a week or a month in the schools.
Okay. So this particular person is asking, what if their school has no clue about that? What do you do?
I would call the Mass Rehab office
Okay.
designated to that school district.
Okay. Excellent. All right.
And
this is relatively new stuff, right? So
it is, but not that new.
Okay.
They should have an office associated with them.
Okay. All right. And would they go to the guidance counselor to find that out?
I would go to the SPED coordinator.
Okay. So it's be special ed driven.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. So referral to these programs, you stressed 2 years. And there's a lot of questions. Is it too late?
Yeah.
Is it too early? But that is a requirement, right? That's an eligibility criteria.
So I think it's going to depend on the student and the counselor, to be
Okay.
honest with you. I would not recommend referring them too early.
Okay.
That might make them not eligible. Mass Rehab is really stressing the 2 years before. Now, if you're working with someone who is 17 and graduating next year when they're 18, I would refer them now, because the service doesn't end because it graduated like an IEP does. This can follow them through college, if they're working towards an employment goal.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And the testing that you're talking about for all of that, and I think that this person is asking for outside testing, not testing by the MRC VR people. And again, sometimes assessments are done through the transition process of the IEP.
Right.
And will they use each other's assessments? I would hope so. I don't know.
I would hope so as well. It depends on what so like a transition assessment through the school could be anything.
Yeah.
I mean, a transition assessment could be talking to the OT-PT person and gathering information there. And that would be useful also to a Mass Rehab counselor. I have been working with Mass Rehab for years, and I was a counselor when I lived in Colorado. The more communication between agencies about an individual, the better the outcomes generally. If information is missing that Mass Rehab needs, then they will get an assessment to satisfy that need for information.
Okay, good. All right. But their timelines are long. You're right.
The timelines are long,
Yeah.
but if you come in with documentation about the disability, that's going to shorten them.
Yeah.
And if you are an active participant, that's going to shorten them. If you don't wait for your rehab counselor to call you in 60 days, if you have the documentation, that will really help to speed things up.
Someone is asking how soon before, so if they want to start collecting assessments and data for MRC, should it be, and this is a question with any kind of educational testing, should it be, can it be before a year?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So as long as you're not bringing an IEP in from when they were 3, or like something that would not be relevant, and it's still true to the person. So if you have a psych report from 2 years ago, and nothing has changed with this individual, that should satisfy Mass Rehab. And if it doesn't, then they can get a new assessment.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So at least try.
Yeah.
See if it meets their criteria.
Yeah, and if not, if they have questions, it is their duty to satisfy those questions by getting assessments to answer those questions. Okay.
So again, this is a great question, Betsy. Thank you. Who do you think does the better assessments, the schools or MRC?
It depends on what you're looking for, really. So if you're looking for a vocational evaluation, I would say outside of the school, to be honest with you, because many times, so I did vocational evaluation for years at the Easter Seals. It's what I specialized when I got my master's degree. And what happens in schools and what happens with people who care for individuals with disabilities is we compensate for the things we know they can't do or we think they can't do. So when they come into a stranger who doesn't know much about them, who's only looking through a lens of employment, they're going to ask them to do things that they maybe are going to surprise the people at school. Like, I didn't think he could do this. I didn't think she could do this. Or I thought she could do it and she ended up not being able to. But we're looking at their behaviors in an employment type setting. Outside of school, everyone acts different from home, from school, from work. Okay, so they're in a setting that is different to them. They know this is testing on work, and they might really shine. Their anxieties may come out, and they might, show work that they need to do in an employment setting. So this is why all of this experience for them is so important in school, so they can test all these things in an environment they can fail in and learn from, and people are still supporting them.
Again, the same kind of line of questioning is, you had restated several times that it's so important to have a job before you graduate, and statistics
or work experience.
Or work experience, right? Who's better at providing that? Do schools do a good job at that? Some schools do.
Some schools do.
Some schools don't.
And some schools. So I worked with kids across the state who were on an IEP who needed a vocational evaluation. Some kids came in, they had worked at the cafeteria at BU or BC through school. They've worked at Wellesley Hospital. They had done so many different work experiences, and they knew what work meant. Or their parents were active volunteers, and kids came in and they knew what volunteering and work meant. And other kids came in, not a clue, had never done any kind of work or volunteering, and it was a very significant difference of how the testing went, how the discussions went, and how my report ended up, their services. These are services they need to do now. They need work experience, even if it's just volunteering in the school store or the office at the school and, answering the phones. That is a completely different skill than sitting in class.
And providing job experience, whatever of kind, whether it's volunteer or paid, for kids with significant disabilities, I think is a hard thing for a family to do on their own.
Yes.
Because they're advocating and they're trying to find positions and stuff like that. So another call for collaboration.
Yes.
Definitely between whomever can give that help and experience.
Absolutely.
So one of the people is asking, do you see a lot of kids with Down syndrome using MRC? Or is it mostly that they let DDS take the lead?
Well, this is a hard question for me to answer because I don't really know it. I think there was a shift with agencies where everything employment went to Mass Rehab, and they weren't necessarily equipped to handle these cases. Okay, so now there's going to be this shift back to a middle ground where DDS is going to have to help Mass Rehab with this kind of client because they can work, but they're going to need more support at the front end. The Mass Rehab doesn't have the experience. They don't have the manpower to do. So there's going to have to be a shift here, and I can't really stress how important it is for families to be involved in these cases or guardians, because they have to get to work, They have to get home from work, and so it's a community to help make all of this successful.
Yeah. And for the last question, because we're almost out of time, this is another verification question, and I think I need to have it answered again also. So if a student is going to community college for 2 years, they're going to community college at 18.
Okay.
When do they apply for MRC?
I would do it now.
Okay. All right. So so they're going to be at school for 2 years, but MRC can help with school, right? So, okay.
If they're eligible for MRC, I would do it now. So they will still fill out a FAFSA form. They will still try to get financial aid. And then if they meet a certain financial need, Mass Rehab can help with that.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay. And that's probably needs-based.
That's needs-based.
Yes.
But they can also help with searching for jobs and, informing them of job fairs coming up and get their resume made for them. And, there are other things that Mass Rehab can support this person in that are unknown to many people who they have a lot of resources that can help individuals in community college or getting ready to graduate from college use.
Yeah. All right. Well, so the only thing I'm concerned about is that large caseload.
Yeah.
Because working with DCF all the time, we know the problems that can create.
Right. Well, a lot of Mass Rehab is vendor management. So they contract out a lot of these services.
Okay.
So they do work one-on-one with their clients, but they also manage contracts with vendors.
Okay. All right. So that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Well, this has been really awesome, Nancy. Thank you so much. And can I encourage people to call the Link Center with questions?
Call the Link Center, shoot me an email,
Okay.
And I'll try to help people answer this. This is not easy stuff. This is not easy to wrap your mind around, and every case is different. So, we're here to help.
And the Link Center, I know I should know this, can they leave questions at any time? How does it exactly work?
Yes.
I know it's a call-in center.
It's a call-in center,
Okay.
and they're there from 10 till 3, 5 days a week.
Okay.
And then you can leave a message. And if you email me, I can also, send a message to the Link Center person will call back.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. So those are your contacts if you need any more information, and we will see you next month. Thanks so much.
Thank you.